Bonjour tout le monde.
Good day, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 57 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people.
Pursuant to the Standing Order of Reference adopted by the House on Tuesday, May the 31st, the committee is resuming clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-18, an act respecting online communications platforms that make news contents available to persons in Canada. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June the 23rd, 2022. And members attending in the room, you know what to do. You've done it so many times before. And members virtually also know what to do. They've done it so many times before. So please wait until I recognize you by name, and for those participating by video conference, click on the icon at the bottom. Please remember that all comments should be made through the chair. Now, before we start, I just wanted to convey, I know, on your behalf, our condolences to Peter on the passing of his mother. Peter, our thoughts are with you. It must be very, very hard losing a parent, I know, and so we are all thinking about you and are with you in this moment of grief. So, now then, we're about to meet Mr. Housefather. Your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this is the appropriate time, I think I have unanimous consent in the room, and I'm hoping for my friend Mr. Julian as well to just put forward a brief motion on our Safe Sports study to summon certain documents. And I know my friend Mr. Shampoo wants to just make a friendly amendment that right afterwards. So, Madam Chair, if it's okay with you and the committee, I'd like to move that in relation to the study of safe sport in Canada, the committee send for the minutes of all board meetings that have taken place since Monday, January 1st, 2018, including in-camera minutes, whether in approved or draft form, from each of the following organizations: Gymnastics Canada, Canada Soccer, Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton, and that all documents be sent to the clerk of the committee by 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, December 15th, 2022. And Mr. Shampoo had a friendly amendment that I'm very happy to accept.
Martin?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Anthony, for presenting this amendment. We would like to add something to Mr. Housefather's amendment. We would like to add 3 sporting associations that would be added after letters C, Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton. We would like to add Swimming Canada, E, Skating Canada, and F, Rugby Canada. The rest of the motion remains unchanged. Thank you.
You are cool with that? Yes. Now, perhaps we can speak to the motion. Does anyone wish to say anything? Do we have a comment? No? Mr. Shields, your hand is up, or are you? Yes, Marilyn?
Yes, Chair. I definitely support this motion, and it's important that we get these things by December 15th because they have to be translated for the committee, and so I think that's a reasonable thing to do while the rest of us are enjoying our Christmas holidays.
Right. Thank you. So, anyone else wishing to say something? Mr. Shields?
Thank you. Just clarifying on the date, and my colleague, I understand what she's saying by having it translated, but that is a 6-week time period before we have an opportunity to deal with it. Are we jamming them up by making it too tight? If it was another 2 weeks, we still have got 4 weeks for it to be translated. We've got organizations out here, that's a very short timeline, so I'm just asking in the sense of, I want to do it, understand it, but we've got a 6-week time period for them to get here and translated. So is that timeline too tight?
Martin, would you like? Well, let's discuss that. Martin?
I'm completely open because I don't think we will be meeting during the holidays to look at this. All the more so because one of Mr. Housefather's ideas was adding in more associations was something that adds more work to the translation team. So I'm open to Mr. Shields' suggestion to whatever date would be appropriate.
C'était juste parce que
Mr. Housefather, it was just because I was thinking of translators, and the sooner the translators have the documents, the easier it will be for them to have the full 6 weeks rather than just 4 weeks, for example. And the minutes from these associations are already in place. We're not asking for new documents to be created.
For them, because we're passing it today, they have more than 2 weeks to get us documents that exist. And I think we would all be flexible if one of them came back and said they wanted a later date. So if it's okay, I would rather leave the 15th to give the translators 6 weeks to translate everything.
All right, so does that satisfy your question, Mr. Shields? So now what we're going to do, we're going to deal with Martin's amendment.
Madame la Présidente, ma main est
No,
levée.
Madam Chair, my hand is raised.
Faut
So
pas
sorry,
oublier
I
la côte
didn't
ouest.
notice you.
You can't forget the West Coast.
Go ahead.
It's not red. It's NDP orange. Madam Chair.
Well, it's a color that's confused. Thank you.
No, I would beg to disagree with you, Madam Chair. I think the color is very clear. Not confused at all. I support the motion by Mr. Housefather and the timelines involved. The organizations maintain minutes. This is not like we're asking them to put together something new, and this is something that should absolutely be available to us. And at the same time, we do need to give translation teams the opportunity to go through the minutes and actually translate them. That will take a number of weeks. And if we then choose back in February when we reconvene to continue this study and broaden the study, as I think as a committee we've already indicated, then I think this is the best approach. The timelines are good. J'aimerais aussi ajouter que
I would also like to add that I had the same thoughts as Mr. Champoux, that is, to add certain other national organizations. So I'm pleased with his sub-amendment as well to Mr. Housefather's motion. I think overall, we're fulfilling our responsibility as a committee to ask for minutes, and after that, to have them translated so that we may look at this when we'll come back in February. So I support the amendment and motion.
Sorry, Ms.
Quickly.
Then Martin.
Great, sure. So we're talking about the amendment, correct?
We're talking about the amendment that Mr. Champoux brought in.
Perfect, thank you. So adding rugby, skating, and swimming, I agree with the additions. I guess I'm just curious if maybe Mr. Housefather can help clarify something. And that is, I'm just wondering, right now, Status of Women is also doing a study with regards to safe sport. And so I guess I'm just wondering how we see these two committees potentially working together or being complementary in terms of this study as we proceed going forward. Yeah?
Yes, would you like to answer that question?
I would only say that I totally agree that we need to work together, and I've let Ms. Vecchio, who's the chair of the Status of Women Committee, know exactly what I was hoping to do and to get the minutes, and she was very supportive of that. And I hope we find a way that we do collaborate together, because I think it's important that the two committees, work together and augment each other's work and not divide it and end up copying things. So I'm in total agreement, and I also let her know that her committee could then also, for example, use the work of our committee, and if they want to see the minutes, they could ask for them too, and they would already be ready.
I have so many questions. Sorry, just in terms of working together?
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. This is Tony.
Okay, sure. I guess I'm just wondering, so right now what I see is I see two committees wanting to do really great work. And so bringing forward witnesses of course, will be an essential part of that process. At Status of Women, some of the witnesses that they have or are intending to bring forward are those that were victims. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about having these individuals testify at both committees when perhaps we could accomplish both of our ends, which I actually think perhaps need to be defined. Do we have a different goal than Status of Women would be one of my questions. And the second question would be, is there a way that we, I don't know, hold our committees together or potentially work together so that these individuals, particularly those individuals who are victims or survivors, that those individuals would only have to come once rather than twice?
I think I would like to suggest that we could find a way to discuss with Status of Women how we could not double victimize victims and have them come at different times, perhaps. I don't know, maybe the clerk can give us an answer. Can we, not form a joint committee, but can we attend these committee hearings? Because the victims would be there in camera, and we would have to be able to get permission to do that. How would we do that? Okay.
I can certainly do a little bit of research and come back to you with an answer on that. I
right.
know there is a way to do a joint committee meeting. You could also simply attend each other's meetings. You have the right, any member of parliament has the right to come and attend meetings.
Yes.
It depends on how official. You can also pass motions to allow the evidence and documents given from one committee to be used in another committee's report. So those are a few avenues, but I could certainly undertake to do more research.
That would be good if you could give us that information. However, I need to point out that we have a mandate, Ms. Thomas, for this study. It was agreed on quite a while ago. What Mr. Housefather is doing is just putting forward a motion with regard to the already agreed upon mandate to study safe sport that this committee, subcommittee and full committee had agreed to. Sorry, Martin.
Je trouve que la question de Mme Thomas est
I find Mrs. Thomas's question to be extremely relevant. There are a lot of possibilities in this study. But this motion is asking for minutes from sporting organizations. So at this stage, all we want is the minutes. And afterwards, what we will determine is what should be done with the content. And that will be up to the committees. And I think that would be the time to, yes, absolutely work together with FIWO, given how delicate this subject matter is and the people who will be testifying.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I can shed some light. When I was chair of Status of Women and we were looking into the sexual misconduct in the military, at the same time that the Defense Committee was also looking into the same subject, we were very clear about our scope in terms of determining what needed to be done to better support survivors and what the Defense Committee was looking at, which was what are the changes needed in the CAF to address it. And so I think as long as we are clear on what our objective is and they are clear on theirs, we did agree to then share the witness testimony jointly between committees in order to minimize the trauma to those survivors. Thank you.
Before I go to Michael Coteau, Clerk, do we have the original motion that the committee agreed to do the study?
The original motion?
Would that have a clear mandate on it?
No, the original motion was to look into Hockey Canada. The subsequent motion was to look into safe sport in Canada, which was passed on September 20th. I can read it out to you if you wish.
If you could, please. Do you have it?
If you will please bear with me, I just need to load up that particular...
And with regard to what Marilyn said, then if we know what our mandate is and we know what FIMO's mandate is, we could come up with a decision on how we don't duplicate. I might want to add that my concept of safe sports study wasn't only about sexual harassment. It was about bullying. It was about, I know that I have spoken to many people in gymnastics who told me that they suffered from anorexia because they were always bullied into feeling that they had put on a pound or 2 pounds. And so there is a huge stuff to go into rather than just sexual misconduct. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So thank you for the patience. So the motion that was adopted, which enlarged and expanded the original mandate of the committee, was that the committee's study of Hockey Canada's involvement in alleged sexual assaults committed in 2018 be expanded to include all matters related to the administration of Hockey Canada and other national sporting federations, and that the title of the study be amended to Safe Sport in Canada. That's the entirety of the motion.
All right. So this sounds like it's about the administration of these groups, Hockey Canada and the others. Okay, so now, Michael.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, so Peter, do you wish to say anything? Actually, it does look like orange now, Peter. There's a changing light behind you.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. And if I invite the committee to my living room, that's what they'll see. Bright NDP orange everywhere. I think we've come to a consensus. I certainly agree with the comments around working with status of women as well. And I think comments are well-founded from every member of the committee. And I hope that this information will be useful to determine the next steps in our study.
Thank you. And now, if we have no further hands up, I would like us to vote on the amendment. Is there anyone opposed to the amendment from Mr. Champoux? No, so that amendment carries. And now we're going to vote on the amended House Father motion. Anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that motion, amended motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will proceed to the business of the day. I would like to note that present in the room is Mr. Ripley is here. Oh, my goodness. All right, we were told you were going to be late because you were doing another close by close. However, so we have Mr. Ripley, we have Mr. Sabac, we have Madame Paré and Pierre-Marc Lezon. So we have all of the people that can give you the information you want to get here. And so we shall proceed when we left off last. And thank you very much, Kevin, for chairing that committee. Well, they know that they've got you to deal with, right? Exactly. Okay, good. Now, I think we are now going to NDP 9, according to my notes. And I think that was moved, obviously, by Mr. Julian. So, NDP 9, you have it in front of you. Do you all have it? Okay. Peter? Peter.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This amendment was suggested by the National Federation for Communications and Culture. It would do two things for interim orders. It would amend the period to up to 1 year, and it also gives the possibility of public consultations. This would add to this bill's transparency. When we talk about interim orders, there's no limits in the bill on those. And this amendment would limit interim temporary orders up to 1 year. What this would do would to ensure that there would be no loophole to look for an interim order.
So this are to increase public transparency by having the possibility of public consultations, a very important element around interim orders, and then to ensure that for interim orders that they cannot continue for more than 1 year. So it's no longer going to be a loophole that Big Tech could potentially use. So with those two components, and with thanks to the Fédération des Communications et de la Culture, I move NDP 9.
I see no hands up to discuss NDP 9. Or is there a hand that I did not notice? Yes, Mrs. Thomas.
Sure. I'm just wanting to clarify something here with the mover, and that is my understanding of this is essentially we're setting a sunset clause, which yes creates greater transparency and accountability, but also an opportunity to revisit. Is that part of this?
Well, it would mean that an interim order couldn't continue for more than a year. So I would suggest not so much a sunset clause as a limitation on interim orders. So they can't be used as a loophole. There would have to be valid reasons for that interim order, and to add the element around public consultations is important. That is something that the commission can fix and put into place as well. So it's I would suggest limiting a loophole and ensuring more public transparency.
Thank you. So just to clarify once again, then the public consultations would be around the exemption order. So basically members of the public would be given opportunity to pipe in as to whether or not they feel the exemption should be granted to a DNI?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. A question to Mr. Ripley. How would this practically roll out in terms of a public consultation around something like this?
Thank you, MP Thomas, and through the chair, if I may. So the framework, as intended in the bill, is again to incentivize digital news intermediaries and news businesses to come to voluntary agreements in relation to the exemption criteria. The idea is that the CRTC would assess the agreements in relation to those exemption criteria. The power to issue an interim exemption was a recognition that, in doing that assessment, the CRTC could conclude that a platform was close, but, for example, maybe was missing a degree of regional representation or something like that. So the idea behind an interim order was, rather than it being no exemption, and now you must go to mandatory bargaining. It's a tool to provide the CRTC to say your agreements fall short in this particular area. You have a period of time to go and rectify that, and then essentially we will reconsider whether you merit an exemption. If I understand MP Julian's amendment on the table, it's one, as he has indicated, is to specify that interim exemption period cannot last longer than a year. My understanding of the consultation language that is being proposed is it would essentially require the CRTC, prior to concluding whether the DNI merits an exemption, at the end of the interim period, there would be a requirement to go back and do another consultation. That's, I think, our understanding of the amendment, but I certainly defer to MP Julian if he has a different intention in mind, and partly that's because based on the amendment that this committee passed last time we were here, there will already have been a public consultation on the question of whether an exemption should be granted or not. So public consultation on exemption, CRTC issues an interim order, and then our understanding of what MP Julian is proposing is that prior to rolling that over into a longer exemption order or not, there would have to be a subsequent second consultation.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. Just in really practical terms, are you able to help me understand just what a public consultation looks like by the Commission? Do we have another example where this is done by the CRTC?
Right. So there is, I would say that there is a spectrum of consultation that the CRTC does, and that runs the gamut from providing an opportunity for stakeholders to make written submissions, and essentially the CRTC then conducts a paper process based on what written submissions they've done. A public consultation, with this kind of language to be held at a time and place in Canada to be fixed by the Commission is short form that there must actually be a public hearing where the CRTC in a physical place has to do a hearing, provide an opportunity for stakeholders to come and make representations in person. So it's a full kind of public consultation, not just a written process.
Now I will go to the question, unless I see no further hands up. So I shall go to the question, shall NDP 9 carry? No opposition, so NDP 9 carries. Now, shall clause 12 carry? Yes, no opposition, clause 12, yes, I'm sorry? Did somebody say something? You said no. Okay, so, are you the only person saying no on your side of the fence, or you're all saying no? So anyway, Miss, did you want to do a count, clerk, to make sure?
Mr. Biddle? In favor. Thank you. Mr. Coteau? In favor. Ms. Hefner? En faveur. Mr. Housefather?
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis?
In favor.
Ms. Gladue?
Contre.
Merci. Mr. Shields?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
Against.
Mr. Champoux?
En faveur.
Mr. Julian?
En faveur. Pour.
Thank you, sir.
Therefore,
7 yeas?
yes,
4
please.
nays.
Thank you. Clause 12 carries. Shall clause 13 carry? No. I hear no on this side, so shall we go with clause 13, clerk? Ensure that it is carried.
Thank you very much. Clause 13, Mr. Biddle? Mr. Coteau? Ms. Hefner? Mr. Housefather?
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis?
In favor.
Ms. Gladue?
No.
Mr. Shields?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
No.
Mr. Champoux?
En faveur.
Mr. Julian?
En faveur.
Merci. 7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 13 carries. Shall clause 14 carry? No. Again, please, clerk. Yeah.
Thank you very much. On clause 14, Mr. Biddle? Mr. Coteau? Ms. Hefner? Mr. Housefather? Mr. Lewis?
In favor.
Ms. Gladue?
Nope.
Mr. Shields?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
No.
Mr. Champoux?
Oui.
Mr. Julian?
Oui, en faveur.
Merci. 7 yeas, 4 nays.
Thank you. Clause 14 carries. Shall clause 15 carry?
No to all of them.
Consistent, Mr. Waugh, consistent. Martin?
Est-il possible, Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, would it be possible to have unanimous consent to group up clauses 16, 17, 18, where there were no amendments, and vote on them together?
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. Since the Conservatives has indicated that they would vote no to all of them, so would you like to call a vote on clause 15, 16, 17, and 18, please, clerk? Sorry?
You would need unanimous consent to regroup the clauses.
Yes, well, would the Conservatives agree to unanimous consent to carry the vote as it is? No? All right, so can we vote on, we're going to have to vote on each of them then, I'm sorry.
je suis désolé, Madame la Présidente.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I must have misunderstood. I heard the other vice chair of the committee confirm that they were going to vote against all clauses, so I've wrongly and presumed that they would be willing to regroup the clauses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Yes, begin, please.
Clause 15,
Yes, clause 15.
Mr. Biddle? In favor. Mr. Coteau? In favor. Ms. Hefner? Oui. Mr. Housefather? En faveur. Mr. Lewis?
In favor.
Ms. Gladue?
Contre.
Mr. Shields?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh,
No.
Mr. Champoux,
En faveur.
Mr. Julian.
En faveur, pour.
Merci. 7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 15 carries. Clause 16 carry.
Clause 16, Mr. Biddle. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Hefner. In favor. Mr. Housefather. In favor. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
No.
Mr. Champoux. Monsieur Julien.
Pour.
Merci.
Oui.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 16 carries. Shall clause 17 carry?
Mr. Biddle. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
No.
Mr. Champoux. Monsieur Julien.
Oui, pour. En faveur.
Merci. 7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 17 carries. Shall clause 18 carry?
Clause 18. Mr. Biddle. In favor. Mr. Coteau. In favor. Ms. Hefner. In favor. Mr. Housefather. In favor. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
Opposed.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
No.
Mr. Champoux. Monsieur Julien.
En faveur, oui, pour.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 18 carries. Now we go to clause 19 and we go to NDP 10. Now, if NDP 10 is adopted, BQ2 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. What NDP 10 sets out is a bargaining process in terms of timing that closes a potential loophole within C18 right now where it is uncertain the amount of time that would take for each step. So what that would lead to is a modification on page 8, lines 2 to 11, starting off with a negotiation or bargaining session over a period of up to 90 days. The parties are unable within the negotiation or bargaining period to reach an agreement. A mediation session of up to 120 days would begin. If the parties are unable within the mediation period to reach an agreement and at least one of the parties wishes to initiate arbitration, final offer arbitration for a period of up to 45 days, beginning on the day after the end of the mediation period. This amendment also foresees that the Commission, upon request of the parties, can extend any of the periods that are set out. Basically, what it does is it pushes big tech to reach agreements. They can't skate around the ice and rag the puck. What they do have to do, because it does go to final offer arbitration after each of these periods are completed, it does compel that level playing field that I think so many of our small media across the country are looking for, that ability to have timelines that push big tech to negotiate those agreements. So that is the intent around NDP 10. I believe Mr. Housefather has a technical amendment that I believe I'll welcome, and hopefully we can pass on a vote on NDP 10.
All right, I have Mr. Champoux first. Martin?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My Neo-Democrat friend's amendment is nearly perfect. Obviously, BQ2 was entirely perfect. But here's what I would propose. A sub-amendment to 1.1, where we would say, on request of the parties, the Commission can extend a period provided for in any of the paragraphs 1A to C. I would propose that this be on request of both parties.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate once again that Mr. Champoux is offering that change. But what is already designed in this amendment already stipulates that it would be by agreement of both parties. So I understand his opposition, but he's already covered in the current amendment.
Là-dessus, Madame la Présidente,
May I respond to that, Madam Chair, just to specify what I'm asking for? I understand that obviously in the English and French versions, the parties plural is specified, but I would have liked for us to be able to ask for both to be specified, the word both, but I didn't want for this to lead to a huge debate if it is a contentious issue. So that was just a suggestion. If my colleague agrees to this friendly amendment, we can move on quickly.
Moi, j'ai pas d'objection.
Mr. Julian says, I have no objection, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had what I think is going to be a friendly amendment to Mr. Julian's very good amendment, which is basically to remove the words up to ou enlever le mot maximal.
Remove the words up to.
Graph.
From all three sections, all three paragraphs, because I think it creates confusion to have the words up to a maximum of, because it could allow for a different number of days. And I don't know how parties will necessarily know how to move from one step to the other if it was 45 days instead of 85 days.
The only reason you wouldn't get to 90 days is if the parties are able to reach agreement before 90 days, or they both agree that they want to move past it. But if you have one party that is still in and one party that wants to move past and says, well, it's up to, then you'll have a confusion. So I think it's simpler to just say a period of 90 days, a period of 120 days, a period of 45 days. And obviously, if the parties agree to do something different, the parties agree to do something different. So anyways, that was my thing. I think it creates confusion to have the up to. Thanks, Mr. Julian, for considering that.
Thank you. So we have an amendment and then a sub-amendment. Mr. Champoux, your amendment has been, is it being removed or is it agreed on by Mr. Julian? So I don't know that that's fine.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, I believe that in both cases, these are technical amendments, and I have no objection. They improve and clarify the amendment, so I have no objection to either of the two amendments. I don't think it changes things drastically. It just clarifies the wording in both cases.
But I still have to call a vote on them. Is anyone who opposes these amendments? No? Everybody's good? So therefore, yes, Ms. Thomas. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. I believe that as a committee, we are only able to consider one sub-amendment at a time, and that each needs to be voted on before we can proceed to the next.
I realize that, but I think I got a sense that everyone seemed to be in agreement, but I am wrong with that sense. Obviously, you are not in agreement. So let us call the vote on Mr. Champoux's amendment, which is on 1.1, on request of both parties. That's the amendment. Do I hear any opposition to the amendment? No, therefore that amendment carries. And now we go to the sub-amendment from Mr. Housefather, which removes an A the words up to 90 days. In B, the words up to 120 days. Not up to 120 days, but up to. And then in C, up to, as referring to 45 days. So is there any opposition to Mr. Housefather's amendment? Not seeing none, then that sub-amendment carries. And so my question then is, shall the motion as amended carry? Yes, Ms. Thomas?
Sorry, so that's one sub-amendment, but then there's another sub-amendment made.
The one on Mr.
That was both of them
Housefather.
that
We just voted on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then when appropriate, I would wish to speak to the amendment as amended.
All right, to the motion as amended. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question to the officials, just to make sure that we understand this section then. Under 19B, it says that it has to be done within a period of time that the commission considers reasonable. Just curious as to how that would be determined.
Thank you, MP Thomas. So if I've understood the question, right now the bill as drafted specifies that it's a period that the commission considers reasonable, and so that would be, in respect of the CRTC's impression of how the mediation and bargaining sessions are going, and so the bill as drafted intended to leave that to the discretion of the CRTC to move things along, basically when it was of the opinion that, the parties had exhausted, bargaining, exhausted mediation. MP Julian's amendment would change that and would specify a definitive period of time for each step of that process.
Thank you. This term considers reasonable then versus defining that period of time, which is the amendment, of course, on the table. This phrase, considers reasonable, I guess I'm wondering how that compares to other legislation of this nature. Is that common? Is it common that we would use language like that and allow it to be up to the governing body, in this case the CRTC, to determine what that reasonable time frame looks like? Or is it more common in legislation that there is a defined period of time, as Mr. Julian has proposed?
So the example that we have is that the CRTC does oversee this kind of bargaining framework in the broadcasting system, and there they do have a degree of discretion, again, to manage that process. In part, the government drafted the bill as it stands, because you could hypothetically have a situation where it's very clear that one party is not interested in bargaining, or one party is not interested in mediation, and therefore it would be open to the CRTC to move the process along quicker, and so that's why it was left. There was a degree of discretion, and again, the CRTC being able to kind of read the state of the negotiations and move it along when it made sense, given the positioning of the parties.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kevin?
Madam Chair, I am concerned. Mr. Ripley, as you know, the CRTC has taken their time on many licenses with radio and television. So, I am I'm just a little concerned on this, because I'll give you the recent one. The CBC license took far longer than it should have. So are we getting bogged down here when this kind of thing comes to the CRTC? We're expecting what it says here, limited amount of time, and yet, as we've often seen with the CRTC, it can take months, if not year or two longer than to do these mediation processes. So am I weeding into something I shouldn't, or am I reading the CRTC right from what I've seen in the past number of years?
Thank you, MP Wah. So through the chair. So Indeed, the government wanted to signal that it's not open for these processes to run on forever, and thus the language about a reasonable period of time to indicate that the CRTC is under that obligation again to move things along. I would also note that the CRTC does have regulation making powers to provide a degree of additional clarity on the process in the bill.
Thank you, Chair. So if I understand then, I like to have a defined period of time rather than to leave it to the CRTC. But in the case where at any of these steps people went overtime, they were making good progress, but things happen, people get sick, whatever. Then if both parties agreed, they could request an extension of that period for that step, and then they'd be all set to move forward. Am I getting it?
Thank you, MP Gladue, through the chair. That's correct. Is our understanding of subparagraph 1.1 would, if, for example, they're on the cusp of a breakthrough and mediation session and need a few more days, and are both in agreement, they could request going beyond the period specified in MP Julian's amendment.
Seeing no other hands up, I shall call the question. Those in favor of the amended motion, Ms. Clerk, can you please call that?
Yes, Madam Chair. On NEP 10 as amended, Mr. Biddle.
In favor.
Mr. Coteau.
In favor.
Ms. Hepner.
In favor.
Mr. Housefather.
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
I'll abstain.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Yes? Yes, sir? Poole? I'm sorry, sir. Is that yes? Oh, thank you.
Ms. Thomas?
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
No.
Thank you. Monsieur Champoux? Mr. Julian?
En faveur, bien sûr.
Eight yeas, 2 nays.
So NDP 10 is carried as amended. Thank you. And so that means that BQ2 shall not be voted on, and we go to CPC 15. Mrs. Thomas. Ms. Thomas.
Sure. So with CPC 15, basically the idea there is to consider both sides of the negotiating process. So there are 2 entities that are being brought to the table, the DNI and the eligible news business, and they are entering into a negotiation and then, of course, coming to an agreement with regards to the value of news being spread or shared on these platforms. What this amendment does then is it asks for true negotiation to be engaged in, which means that both sides of the coin get to be considered. So if there is value that is added to the DNI, if there's value gained because the news source is being offered, that is one side. The other side is if the DNI is offering value to the news source, then that also should be considered, which currently is left out of this legislation. So again, it just looks to truly create an opportunity for bargaining, which is not a one-sided negotiation, but rather a two-sided negotiation. I'll leave it there for now, but I do have questions for the officials.
Thank you. Mr. Biddle?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. C18, we've discussed this a lot, allows platforms to, allows parties to reach deals that focus on the use of the content that benefits them both. This amendment, we believe, really narrows the scope of what compensation is. We think that this may actually lower the value deals for publishers. We've been clear, it's not for the government to determine the conception of value. It's for the parties to come to the table and negotiate on what value is. Like previous amendments we've seen before this committee, this amendment only benefits the platforms and foreign tech giants. Unfortunately, time and time again, as we're slow rolling through this bill, the Conservatives seem to want to give platforms the ability to tell news organizations how much they'll get. And I think the rest of the parties have demonstrated we really believe that we need to rein in foreign tech giants. It's unfortunate that there's one party here that doesn't share that belief.
Thank you, Mr. Biddle. I don't see any other hands up. So, Ms. Thomas, Mrs. Thomas, you wanted to ask a question of the officials?
Sure. Yeah, I did just have one question for clarification around this amendment that's being moved. So right now, the bill reads in its current form. It reads that the bargaining process is limited to matters related to the making available by digital news intermediary in question of news content produced by a news outlet that is identified under Section 30, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the phrase making available and by the digital news intermediary. I am just wanting to confirm, though, that in this current legislation, as it is stated now, there is no consideration given to the value that a DNI might be offering a news source.
Thank you, MP Thomas. Through the chair, the relevant provision on the value exchange is at Section 38, and Section 38 acknowledges the value exchange goes both ways. So if you look at Section 38, it speaks about the value added, monetary and otherwise, to the news content in question by each party in terms of being assessed in terms of their investment, expenditures, and other actions in relation to that content. And then subparagraph B of Section 38 talks about the benefits, monetary and otherwise, that each party receives from the content being made available. So Section 38, which is relevant when we get to final offer arbitration part of the process, recognizes that there is value that flows both ways. The bargaining framework as contemplated right now by the bill leaves a degree of discretion for the parties to determine through bargaining or mediation what is the appropriate agreement that makes sense in light of both parties' objectives. So it's only when you get to that final offer arbitration element that the bill is prescriptive about, here's how a final offer arbitration panel is to come to a conclusion. Section 19 intentionally left there a degree of space for parties to come to agreements that make the most sense to them.
Thank you. So I guess sorry, Mr. Ripley, just to be very clear here then, if Section 38 allows for a value exchange, then why wouldn't that be protected or stated within Section 19?
Thank you, MP Thomas. Recognizing that final offer arbitration is the final step in the bargaining process if parties are unable to agree, in part that informs the previous bargaining, because parties know if they get to that final step, a final offer arbitration decision will reflect that value exchange. I certainly don't want to speak to your intention on moving the motion before us because I heard your explanation, but when I look at the motion as drafted, it speaks to the value to the digital news intermediary of making available to persons in Canada. And so from my perspective, it speaks to one element of Section 38, but it doesn't speak to, again, the value in the news content, and then conversely the benefits derived from both parties. In my opinion, it would speak to one element of that, and therefore there perhaps is a degree of tension with section 38, which has a broader conception of that value exchange.
But am I understanding you correctly, though, that value exchange on both sides of the coin is only considered in final or only mandated in final arbitration right now? It's not outlined as a part of the self-initiated bargaining process. Is that correct?
That is correct. That value exchange is only necessarily considered at the final offer arbitration stage. Again, the Act is constructed in a way to leave as much room as possible for parties to come to voluntary commercial agreements prior to that final offer arbitration stage, where an arbitral panel is essentially making that determination for them.
So sorry. So just coming back to this, though, like, I just don't know that I have a clear answer as to why it wouldn't be a part of Section 19. Like, if it's going to be in Section 38, if upon final arbitration, both sides of the coin are going to be considered there, but both sides of the coin aren't going to be considered prior to that, or at least aren't mandated to have that be the case. Correct?
The intention is certainly that parties come to the table understanding that value exchange flows both ways. So it's not to preclude that, MP Thomas, but Section 19 was intentionally not limited, for example, to financial compensation, because it acknowledged that it's up to the parties to determine what that appropriate agreement could look like, and that could include a number of things, including financial compensation, but also non-monetary elements of the agreement as well. And so, again, the goal was not to be prescriptive, but to provide the parties with flexibility to come to agreements that make the most sense until that final step.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should. I see no hands up. Let us, please, clerk, go to the vote on Bill C-18, the committee stage, CPC 15. Vote, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Biddle.
Opposed.
Mr. Coteau.
Opposed.
Ms. Hefner. Ms. Hefner?
Sorry, opposed.
Mr. Housefather.
Contre.
Mr. Lewis.
Against.
Thank you. Ms. Gladue.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes?
Mr. Shampoo. Mr. Julian.
No, contre.
Seven nays, 4 yeas.
CPC 15 does not carry. Shall Clause 19 carry as amended?
Yes.
I see noes on the other side, so can we call the question, please, clerk?
On Clause 19, Mr. Biddle.
Favor.
Mr. Coteau.
Favor.
Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather.
Pour.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
Contre.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
Against?
Mr. Shampoo. Mr. Julian.
En faveur, pour.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 19 carries as amended. Now, we've got a new clause, 19.1, and we have NDP 11. Mr. Julian.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This amendment stipulates that any provision in a covered agreement respecting payments to be made by a digital news intermediary to a news business must be based solely on the editorial expenditures of the business.
Là vient justement de
And this amendment comes from the National Association for Independent Online Publications. And I would just like to mention that, of course, this includes new media networks, as well as Metro Media, as well as dozens and dozens of publications across the country.
Independent Online News Publishers of Canada have made this suggestion in terms of improving the fairness around the formula. We've succeeded, I think, Madam Chair, as a committee in adding transparency to C18 and closing a lot of the loopholes. The fair funding aspect is extremely important, and the Independent Online News Publishers of Canada are right across the country. I wanted to shout out to the Burnaby Beacon and the New Westminster Anchor, two of those online publications that do very, very good work in our community. And so the essence of the amendment is to focus on editorial expenditures, on journalists, that the payments really be made in terms of setting staff time, freelance, contract labor in journalism. And that is why they made this suggestion to put in place a level playing field. In terms of what is the appropriate number of editorial expenditures to be covered, we saw in the Australia example, we're talking about 30 to 35% of editorial expenditures. In other words, what this amendment would serve to do is put in place a fair funding formula based on editorial expenditures, something that is alluded to in the bill, but isn't as clear as this amendment would make it. And so with thanks to the Independent Online News Publishers of Canada, I move this NDP 11, this amendment that would ensure that payments are based solely on editorial expenditures on the actual provision for journalism in the business. Thank you.
Peter, Mr. Biddle.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I guess my comments will relate to both NDP 11 and PV3 if we get there, but in C18, platforms must negotiate over the ways they make news content available. It allows parties to reach the deals that focus on the use of content that benefits them both. This amendment shifts the focus of compensation from a broad conception of value of news content to the DNI to a narrow concept of cost of production. Editorial expenditures as a measure for fair compensation could be perceived as a tax on platforms, which could lead to trade and legal concerns. It could also discourage innovation by only rewarding established forms of news production, such as conventional newsrooms. This will likely undermine the compensation that is paid through the regime. As we've said before, we should leave it to the parties to negotiate freely. We shouldn't be too restrictive in this bill.
Thank you. I see no other hands up, and so shall we call the question? Shall NDP 11 carry?
So it's okay.
On NDP 11, Mr. Biddle.
Chris?
Opposed.
Mr. Coteau?
Opposed.
Ms. Hefner? Opposed. Mr. Housefather?
Contre.
Mr. Lewis?
Against.
Ms. Gladio?
Also against.
Mr. Shields?
No.
I'm sorry, was that no?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Wall?
No.
Mr. Shampoo?
Contre.
Mr. Julian?
Pour. En faveur.
That's 10 nays, 1 yay.
NDP 11 did not carry. Now, PV 3. Shall PV 3 carry? Yes?
Thank you, Chair. PV3 intends on doing similar to what NDP 11 just attempted. And this, again, comes from the Independent Online News Publishers of Canada, seeking to move towards more equitable and fair deals by focusing on bargaining power, using a set percentage of organizations' editorial expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Given that we've already discussed and voted on the similar motion. So shall I, sorry, Mr. Shampoo, is it? Yes?
Ouais, Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering about the procedure for tabling an amendment. Has Mr. Morris officially tabled his amendment?
Yes, he has.
D'accord, merci.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, in that case, I use the same reasoning as the reasoning that guided my vote on NDP 11. I think the intention is very good, and I see where the intention and motivation behind these amendments are, but unfortunately, I will not be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I see no other hands up. Shall we call the vote, please, on PV 3?
Thank you very much. On PV3, Mr. Biddle. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Huffman. Mr. Housefather.
Contre.
Mr. Lewis.
Against.
Ms. Gladue.
Against.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Watt.
No?
Monsieur Shampoo.
Contre.
Mr. Julian.
En faveur, oui. Pour.
10 nays, 1 yay.
PV 3 does not carry. Shall clause 20 carry? Is there an opposition to clause 20 carrying? No, hearing none. You oppose? The CPC opposed, so we have to call a question. Please, clerk.
Clause 20, Mr. Biddle. In favor. Mr. Coteau. In favor. Ms. Hefner. In favor. Mr. Housefather. En favor. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Watt.
No?
Monsieur Shampoo.
Oui.
Monsieur Julian.
En faveur, oui. Pour.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 20 carries. Shall clause 21 carry? No, I'm hearing no again. So, clerk, will you please call the question?
Clause 21, Mr. Biddle. In favor. Mr. Coteau. In favor. Ms. Hefner. In favor. Mr. Housefather. En favor. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Watt.
Opposed?
Monsieur Shampoo.
Oh oui, oui, pour.
Mr. Julian.
Oui. Pour. En faveur.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 21 carries. Shall clause 22 carry? Again, we hear a no on the other side, so can you please call the question, clerk?
Absolutely. Clause 22, Mr. Biddle. In favor. Mr. Coteau. In favor. Ms. Hefner.
In favor.
Mr. Housefather.
In favor.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Waugh,
No.
Monsieur Champoux,
En faveur.
Monsieur Julian,
Oui, pour, en faveur.
Ça compte juste pour un, Peter. Hein?
That just counts for one, Peter.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Ah, c'est vrai?
Clause 22 carries. Shall clause 23 carry? No, I'm hearing a no. Please call the question.
Clause 23, Mr. Biddle. Monsieur Coteau. Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather.
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Waugh.
Opposed?
Monsieur Champoux.
Pour.
Monsieur Julian.
Oui, pour, en faveur. Et je dis les trois juste pour être certaine que les communications.
And I'm saying all three just to make sure it communicates through clearly.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 23 carries. Now, shall clause 24 carry? Yes. Am I hearing a no, Mrs. Thomas?
A massive no.
Fine, okay. Shall you call
Could
the
not be
question, please,
larger.
clerk?
Not a fan of violating copyright laws.
Clause
Yes.
24, Mr. Biddle. In favor. Mr. Coteau.
In favor.
Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather.
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
Nope.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Waugh.
No.
Monsieur Champoux.
En faveur.
Monsieur Julian.
Oui, pour, en faveur.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 24 carries. Now we go to new clause 24, 1, and we have CPC 15.1. Mrs. Thomas.
All right, thank you. Sure. So of course, this is the insertion of a new clause following clause 24, which has to do with copyright. And so it's just to add further clarity. So it states that Section 24 does not limit the right of quotation of any party. That is our amendment. The reason why we feel that this is very important, and we heard from numerous witnesses that it was, is because it would allow then for people to use a quote, a small quote from a source in their social media posts, for example, without being penalized for doing so. And so that we feel that's very, very important. I think it's also important to note that we did hear from quite a few witnesses with regards to the Copyright Act and concerns that were raised, most notably from Michael Geist, who is a professor and a lawyer who actually specializes in copyright law. So I feel that his voice is probably one of the most authoritative in the country with regards to this topic. And he said that essentially under section or clause 24, essentially what it does is it would mean that certain parties don't have rights of quotation. And so that would have to be somehow set aside in the negotiation process, which seems wrong. And he also raised concern with regard to what this would mean in terms of international agreements, international copyright law. He also noted that this is not found in the Australian legislation, which Canada's Heritage Minister, Minister Rodriguez, has claimed that he is fashioning this bill around Australia. We've noted in other areas too where the government has departed and actually in a negative way from the Australian legislation and actually has taken liberties that are quite likely setting this bill up for a charter challenge at minimum, if not further challenge as well. And so it would seem then that with Section 24 in its current state being a violation of international law and the Copyright Act, we're looking to bring further clarification and essentially contend for Canadians and their ability to be able to share small amounts of content in a quoted format within their social media platforms. I will leave it there for now and perhaps revisit in a moment.
Any further discussion? Mr. Biddle.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This amendment was written with the idea that C18 somehow violates international copyright agreements like the Berne Convention, but I'd like to remind some colleagues of testimony we've heard that dispelled copyright-related concerns of the bill, and this was from Professor Stevens. Said the following: criticisms that C18 would violate our international trade obligations, as well as the Berne Copyright Convention, do not stand up to scrutiny. He also added there was, quote, there was no, quote, strong legal argument to challenge the bill under either CUSMA or the Berne Convention, close quote. And further, Mrs. Thomas talked about the charter. I don't believe we heard any evidence about charter concerns as well. This is a respected expert on the subject, and we are opposed.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to raise one comment that Mr. Biddle had made, which is I think this actually is detrimental to what Ms. Thomas seeks to achieve. Basically, the argument here is that there is no violation of the Copyright Act or of the Berne Convention or of anything else. By saying that Section 24 does not limit the right of quotation, it then implies that Section 24 is intended to limit other sections of the Copyright Act, and because you're only carving out one exception. And I would like to ask Mr. Ripley, is that a possible interpretation that then by saying that Section 24 explicitly does not do this, that it then might be implied that it is intended to do things that it was never intended to do?
Thank you, MP Housefather. So, indeed, the government had to consider the relationship between this piece of legislation and the Copyright Act, and the decision was made that essentially the Copyright Act continues to stand alongside this piece of legislation, and it does not in any way limit the scope of the rights or the limitations and exceptions provided for under the Copyright Act. That said, and that's why if you look at actually most of these provisions, they're for greater certainty provisions. Section 24 was explicitly provided, though, to indicate that acknowledging that there are uses that digital news intermediaries make of copyrighted material that would be a limitation or exception under the Copyright Act, that's perfectly appropriate. But the bargaining is intended to sit alongside that and say that you don't get to come into the negotiations and say, well, these uses are covered by fair dealing or these uses are covered by exceptions, and therefore, we want to see a corresponding decrease in the value, right? So they were intended to sit alongside each other with the bargaining obligation there. I would share the concern that focusing on one particular limitation or exception does potentially create adverse interpretations with respect to other limitations or exceptions in the Copyright Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
So just a question for the officials then. I guess I'm just of the concerns that were raised, they were raised by intelligent people. I mean, with all due respect, I don't think that Professor Michael Geist is, I don't believe that he's purposely trying to mislead this committee in any way. And he's been given the credentials he has for a reason, and the position within his university setting for a reason. He's referred to as one of the most senior voices on this issue in the nation. So when it comes to copyright then, there are provisions made right now for us as Canadians where we are allowed taking a certain percentage of material, generally 10, and replicating that and making it public without any negative repercussions. This bill, in its current state, would not allow for the quotation of material taken from a news source without that news source being able to use that as a form of as an opportunity for bargaining or negotiation. In other words, there is no protection for those that are wanting to share small quotations of news. Is that not correct?
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. So nothing in this bill is intended to reduce the scope of limitations or exceptions under the Copyright Act vis-a-vis the digital news intermediary or any use that you or I as individuals can make of copyrighted material. What the Act does do is it nonetheless imposes an obligation on dominant social media and other digital news intermediaries to bargain. So that obligation sits alongside whatever use is permitted under the Copyright Act, and then the consequences of not bargaining under this Act are distinct and separate from questions of infringement of copyright, right? So this Act does not speak to whether it's an infringement of Copyright Act. It does not speak to whether it's an infringement of copyright. What it says is if a digital news intermediary does not bargain, then there are, potentially consequences that stem from that.
Sure. I understand what you're saying in terms of intended versus unintended consequence. I understand what the legislation, if you look at it as a purist, turning a blind eye to the unintended consequences, I understand what it does. But essentially, if you're taking small portions of news, and if those small portions of news are then able to be used as a part of the reason for negotiating, wouldn't that have an unintended consequence then of going against or challenging the Copyright Act?
Thank you, MP Thomas. So the Act is in no way intended to limit the activity of individuals sharing quotation or any permitted use under the Copyright Act. Section 24, though, is explicitly designed to, again, preempt an argument that just because something is permitted under the Copyright Act, it necessarily reduces the value of news content under this Act. So the government is not disputing that digital news intermediaries and their activities may be covered by certain limitations or exceptions under the Copyright Act, and thus it's not an infringing use of that material. That's not in dispute. However, this framework as constructed was intentional in not situating that value, that discussion over value in the Copyright Act framework. And that was an intentional decision. The committee has heard about, some of the European laws which are situated in the Copyright Act framework, but the Australian regime was a bargaining framework, and that is the model that the government has chosen to pursue.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Marilyn?
Thank you, Chair. So Professor Geist, who I agree is well recognized for his work on copyright law, expressed concerns about this very area and said, for Section 24, I must say I find it astonishing that we would effectively say that certain parties don't have rights of quotation. You have to set it aside for the purposes of negotiation. This is a must-have within international copyright law, yet it's been excluded. I should note that this is something you don't find in the Australian legislation. This is a made-in-Canada violation of international law. For example, Clause 24, which excludes copyright limitations and exceptions from the bargaining process, may violate Article Article 10.1 of the Berne Convention, which has a mandatory right of quotation that expressly includes newspaper articles. So I do think that, putting this in the bill will clarify any attempt by anyone to, do something that was unintended.
Thank you. Anthony?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I always appreciate Marilyn's comments. I think there are two different things here, though, and I guess I want to frame this in terms of last question to Mr. Ripley from me. I think that there's one view that there is, which I think is the view that I hold, that there is no violation here of the Copyright Act, that nothing within the Copyright Act is limited, and there's nobody that will be sued for infringement of the Copyright Act as a result of things that they do because of this bill, but that the bill also, and we are allowed to say you must negotiate and we will not take into account certain exceptions under the Copyright Act, irrespective of the amount, when you're considering the amount that you're ultimately getting for the value of news content. There's another argument that will say, well, that's in violation of the Copyright Act, and those people who have that colorable claim, and again, law is gray, right? There's no total black and total white, may sue and say this is a violation of the Copyright Act, and the courts will then determine that. This amendment, though, I don't think serves the purpose that the proposer is looking for. The proposer, I believe, is rightly saying we want to make sure that the right to quotation, which is a right under the Berne Convention, a right under the Copyright Act, is preserved. But I don't think that putting it there actually achieves that. What I think it does is creates an ambiguity that the bill is actually intended to limit rights under the Copyright Act, and therefore this one right continues to be guaranteed, but other rights, which are equally valid under the Copyright Act as exceptions, are no longer valid because this one is singled out. So I think it actually achieves the opposite purpose because, yes, it may enhance the copyright right somehow because it will be clearer, but then it becomes unclear if other exceptions are meant to be preserved as well, and it changes what I think the intent of Section 24 was meant to say. So I don't know if that'll convince anybody because, again, I don't believe there's a white and a black here. I think it's gray, but I don't think this amendment furthers the purpose of those who are worried that there's an infringement of the Copyright Act. I think it actually means that other sections or other exceptions under the Copyright Act will be more likely to not be sustained because people will then assume that Section 24 is meant to actually say the Copyright Act no longer covers certain things. And I don't think that was the intention of the framers of the bill. So I guess I'd throw that to Mr. Ripley to see if he agrees with that rather long and perhaps unclear, but I think it was relatively clear dissertation.
Thank you, MP Housefather. And my answer is the same, that the government's intention is not to impact the scope of the Copyright Act. And then thus, yes, potentially teasing out one specific exception to copyright from an interpretation perspective, then Parliament has explicitly turned its mind to that question, and there could be inferences made about the other limitations or exceptions that aren't listed.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
All right. I'm going to attempt to make this my concern as clear as possible, I guess, and the concern that I heard from other witnesses that came to the table. So I'm going to try my hand at a tangible example here. So Canadians, right now, we have the incredible ability to exchange ideas within public platforms or online platforms, such as Facebook. And it's this new form of public square where ideas are exchanged, sometimes quotes are taken and expressed, entire news articles are sometimes posted. Now, I recognize that going forward, if Facebook continues to allow for articles to be posted, then they will be declared a DNI and they will need to enter into negotiation. Facebook has said they may consider removing the ability of news to be shared on their platform so that they cannot be scoped into this legislation. If they were to make that decision and Canadians wanted to take a quote from a newspaper article and post that quote on their Facebook page, a small snippet. And they wanted to take that quote and they wanted to put it on their Facebook page. Would Facebook be allowed to permit that without being called or captured by this legislation?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, MP Thomas. So the concept of making available or facilitating access to is really intended, again, to the primary driver behind this bill, if we go back to first principle, is recognizing that Canadians use these services in order to access news content. And so primarily it's that idea of facilitating access to it. And, you know, we've heard the debate around, you know, linking or should it be included or not. But the government's position is you need to include it because that is at its core about what it means to facilitate access to news content in the modern digital environment. The example that you give in a context where Facebook has made the business decision to essentially prevent the ability of users to link to news articles, but you have an example of, you know, an individual, you know, quoting from a particular news article without a link, I do not believe that would engage or trigger the application of the Act, no.
But as soon as a link was included, then they would be scoped into this legislation.
From my perspective, the act of linking is a critical one in the sense of it boils down to the facilitation of access, and again, that's at the crux of this bill is a recognition that you know, the ways that Canadians navigate to news content for a significant number of Canadians is via social media service, is via search service, which involves clicking on a link, yes.
Therefore ascribing a value to that link.
The obligation, MP Thomas, is recognizing that there is value to facilitating access to that. Again, there have been, you know, the business model of these digital news intermediaries is for the most part dependent on the advertising market, and as we previously talked about, it's in a context where the news businesses are relying on those platforms as distribution platforms and competing against them in the very same advertising market. And so there is value. Yes, there is value about the digital news intermediary occupying that kind of gateway function.
But for further clarification, without the link, it is your understanding that Bill C-18 would not give rise to or provide opportunity for Facebook in this instance, in this example, to be determined a DNI and therefore scoped in by the CRTC or even perhaps penalized by the CRTC?
It's a question of threshold to a certain extent, right? What I would say is that the concept of making news content available, I've described it before as the thing that triggers whether a digital news intermediary is actually caught by the obligation to bargain. And again, that's in recognition that they play that kind of gateway function to news content. That's obviously got to be done in a meaningful way, and so the hypothetical that you put, where again Facebook scrubs news content from news feed, the question of an individual quoting a news article is not going to meet the threshold of then. You know, of there being value in that, because again, the value lies in the premise of the bill is that the value lies in making available news content, and obviously the situation that you've described is very limited in the kind of news content that's being made available, and there's nothing in the bill that's designed to restrict Canadians' ability to share a quote.
Sure. So what is that threshold then? Because with all due respect, Mr. Ripley, my example with Facebook was it's more than just theory. It's potentially on the table. So for the sake of Canadians and the exchange of information, the public discourse that takes place there, I think this is an important question. Are Canadians going to be able to take a quotation from a news article and share it on Facebook, or will that not be permitted? What is that threshold?
Thank you, MP Thomas. And so the threshold is, when you look at how Section 6 is constructed, it talks about a digital news intermediary if, having regard to the following factors, there is a significant bargaining power imbalance between its operator and news businesses, and then you have the three factors that we've previously discussed. For there to be a bargaining imbalance, news businesses' content has to be distributed across that platform. That's why Facebook and Meta have put it forward that a decision that they're contemplating is essentially removing themselves from that business by saying, well, we will no longer be a distribution platform, and therefore that's why my answer to you is I find it hard to see how you meet the designation at Section 6 if Meta has chosen to remove itself from that business.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. And so, seeing no other hands up, I'm going to call a question on CPC 15.1. Shall CPC 15.1 carry?
CPC 15.1, Mr. Biddle. Opposed. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Hepner. Mr. Housefather.
Contre.
Mr. Lewis.
Against.
Ms. Gladue.
En faveur.
Mr. Shields.
For.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Waugh.
In favor.
Mr. Champoux.
Contre.
Mr. Julian.
Contre, no, opposé.
7 nays, 4 yeas.
CPC 15.1 does not carry. And now we shall go to the question of, interesting here, I have a CPC 15.2. Marilyn?
Yeah, Chair, 15.2 was. Oh, she has clauses to do.
Sorry. All right, then. I'm sorry, Marilyn. I kind of got that one messed up there. So shall clause 25 carry? Please, the question.
Clause 25, Mr. Biddle. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather.
En faveur.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Waugh.
Opposed.
Mr. Champoux.
En faveur.
Mr. Julian. Mr. Julian?
Peter? I think he is frozen.
Vote in favor.
Is there some way that we can get Mr. Julian's
Julian?
vote, please?
Okay. 6 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 25 is carried. Should clause 26 carry? Once again, the vote, please.
Mr. Julian back is,
Oh, he just disappeared.
yeah, he's probably going to try to call back in.
Pardon? Yes, can we wait until he gets in because these are votes, so.
It's the fair thing to do. The honorable thing.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So I ended up trying.
15, yes. 15 too. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Shall we suspend? Shall we suspend then for a little bit until we see whether we can get hold of Peter?
Sure.
Six. Mr. Biddle. Mr. Coteau. Ms. Hefner. Mr. Housefather. Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Opposed.
Mr. Waugh.
Opposed?
Monsieur Champoux.
En faveur.
Monsieur Julian.
Sure there.
Oh, no.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Julian.
En favor, en favor, and thank you very much to the committee for suspending briefly while Zoom took me around the country.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 yeas, 4 nays.
Clause 26 carries. And now we go to clause 27. Now, this is, I'm sorry, Marilyn, this is where you come up. This is
Absolutely.
CPC 15.2. But I would like to tell everyone that if CPC 15.2 is adopted, sorry, Martin?
Demande un droit de parole pour.
I was just asking to put my hand up to speak to the amendment once Ms. Gladue will have tabled it.
I'd like to let everyone know before. Do you want to speak before I let everyone know what happens? No. If If CPC 15.2 is adopted, NDP 12, PV 4, CPC 16, BQ 3, CPC 17, CPC 17 1, CPC 18, NDP 13, CPC 19. Are you all taking notes? Okay, all right. CPC 19 1, NDP 14, NDP 15, PV 5, NDP 16, CPC 20, G2, CPC 21, and CPC 22 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Now, Ms. Gladue. CPC 15.2.
So, Chair, as tempting as it would be to, keep my motion and eliminate the scads of other motions on this topic, I actually like some of the other ones better, so I would withdraw 15.2.
There you go. Thank you very much, Ms. Gladue. So now, we're going to go to NDP 12. Now, once again, I will reiterate, if NDP 12 is adopted, PV 4, CPC 16 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Also, if NDP 12 is adopted, CPC 16 becomes moot as they are identical. My goodness. Finally, if NDP 12 is defeated, so is CPC 16 for the same reason. Now, NDP 12.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And so just to clarify, it has an impact on PV 4 and CPC 16. That's a question, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were just going to wax eloquent on your amendment, Peter. What was the question again? Sorry.
Just to make sure that I have the line conflicts clear, it's PV4 and CPC 16.
Yes. But if it's adopted, then CPC 16 becomes moot, as we know, because they're identical, and NDP 12, if it's defeated, so is CPC 16, just so you know. Okay?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now is my chance to wax eloquent and talk about the National Campus and Community Radio Fund. These are community broadcasters across the country that provide so much local news and information, but they're not defined in the QCJO. And this is an issue we've even had within the tax framework because these are nonprofit stations. They've applied for QCJO status and have been rejected because this in broadcasting through the Income Tax Act. So the amendment, NDP 12, is simply adding in terms of the QCJO definition that news media either defined by QCJO or licensed by the Commission under paragraph 9(1)(b) of the Broadcasting Act as a campus station, community station, or an indigenous station, as those terms are defined in regulations made under the Act. So what this would do is simply allow for the nonprofit sector to have a place within Bill C-18. You'll recall, Madam Chair, we've already adopted amendments that strike to both for-profit and nonprofit entities. So in terms of news media, we need to support community broadcasters. I think the committee as a whole has already indicated that direction in the amendments we've adopted so far. And I'd like to thank National Campus and Community Radio for the work they do right across the country every day. What this would do is without creating a free-for-all, would simply slightly broaden the categories of entities of news media organizations that could benefit from C-18. So with that, I would move NDP 12.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on NDP 12? Mrs. Thomas, is your hand up? Oh, sorry. Mr. Biddle first and then Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We do have a sub-amendment that would be made at are defined in the regulations made under the Act. So at the end of the amendment, or other categories of licensees established by the Commission with a similar community mandate. So the added line would be, or other categories of licensees established by the Commission with a similar community mandate. And we believe this helps future-proof the bill.
Where would you like to see that exactly put in?
Right at the
Very
end,
end?
Madam Chair. I do have a few extra copies. I don't think I have enough for everyone plus up front, but I do have a few extra copies.
Je vais prendre
Is
celle qui est en
everyone
français.
aware?
I'll take the one in French, please.
Oh, of that sub-amendment, sorry. Could we have a look at it, please, Peter? Chris, thanks. Thank you.
We would take that extra copy. We don't have one. There you go.
One second. You good? Everyone's good?
Does everyone have copies? It looks like everyone has copies, actually. Clerk?
Okay. Does anybody need a copy?
Please note that this is to be added after the words under that act in NDP 12. Mr. Biddle, you already discussed your sub-amendment. Is there any discussion on this sub-amendment? Yes, Mrs. Thomas.
Am I next on the list?
You're now.
Okay, perfect. All right. Quick question to the officials, if it can be answered. The only difference that in their original content, in their original state before the sub-amendment, the only difference is the use of the word "or." So in CPC 16, it says "or is licensed by the Commission" in the second line of our amendment. In PV 4, it says "is licensed by the Commission." And in NDP 12, it says "or is licensed by the Commission." So just looking for some clarification as to whether or not these little words make a difference.
Or an is.
Thank you, MP Thomas. So perhaps I can characterize it like this. The Section 27 eligibility right now has kind of two doors you could knock on. Either you are a QCGO under the Income Tax Act, in which you are automatically deemed eligible, or if you're not eligible to be a QCGO, for example, the best example is because you're a broadcaster, you have to meet the criteria at subparagraph B. My understanding of the amendment is essentially create a third door, which if you are licensed by the Commission, as a community station, as a campus station, as a native station, then you would also automatically be deemed eligible. So from where I sit, if that is the intention of the amendment, an "or" would be appropriate, but I also look to the legislative clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Rips.
You fine with it? Yes, Mr. Mello is fine.
There's no big difference.
Or is better.
It's more of a legal question. It's more of a legal question.
Question of or and? Mr. Biddle, question of or and?
No, I have nothing further to add.
Madeline?
Yes, I think the key point is that community radio stations and all those sorts of things didn't meet the other definition, and so they are licensed, and so it has to be or, because it's this group of people that qualify, and then for the ones that don't qualify, it's those that are licensed. So it's this or that.
Thank you. Mrs. Thomas.
Perfect. Okay, and then just for further clarification, then with this sub-amendment that's been made, again, it just, for me, it seems quite broad, so I'm wanting to understand it, or other categories of licensees. What could that potentially include?
Thank you, MP Thomas. So the I don't want to speak for the mover, but the original amendment is static in the sense it speaks to campus station, community station, or native stations as they are currently defined, and so my understanding of what the sub-amendment seeks to do is recognize that those categories may shift over time as the CRTC updates their regulatory framework, and it's simply to not be caught in a situation where, because the language is static and references specific terms, that then suddenly those stations would be excluded, and so that it is bounded by the concept of similar community mandate. So again, it refers back to kind of the concepts that are here: campus station, community station, or native station, but recognizes that those categories may shift over time or be defined differently.
Thomas, can we move on? Oh, no, not yet.
Sorry, this. Can you just give me an example? Like, is there an example beyond this list that is here right now? Like, is it purely just theoretical in the future, or is there already an example of an entity that would fit outside of this list of 3?
So from time to time, the CRTC updates certain policy frameworks, right? So, for example, they do make changes to their community broadcasting framework, and so you could see them change the categories of licensees in that context. The CRTC is currently engaged in a process updating its Indigenous broadcasting policy, and so you could see, for example, again, changes to terminology. You could see changes to the way that those stations are classified. So again, it's the amendment as drafted is just very static based on how those things are defined currently. And I don't want to speak to the mover's intention, but I think it's to recognize that those things may shift.
Now I will call the question on the sub-amendment.
Peter's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter.
Good catch, Mr. Waugh. Thank you. I just wanted to say that Mr. Biddle was kind enough to give me a heads up on the amendment, and I support his sub-amendment. I think it does allow for some scope in the future around these nonprofit entities, community radio and campus radio. It does allow for some ability for them to be incorporated into C18, which I think is the objective of all of us, and that's why we adopted the language around nonprofit. So thanks to Mr. Biddle. I support his amendment.
Thank you, Peter. And so I'm going to call the question on the sub-amendment as moved by Mr. Biddle. Clerk, please, do we have unanimous consent? Is there anyone opposed to the sub-amendment? No, so we have unanimous consent to that sub-amendment, and now we would go to the amendment. And so I would presume, but I don't want to take liberties, do we have unanimous consent on the amendment? Yes? All right, so then NDP 12, as amended, passes. And we're now going to see that PV4 will no longer be done, and CPC
Point of order.
Sorry, Peter.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I just recognized that we're a few minutes from the end.
We have an extra 3 minutes. We have an extra 3 minutes.
I did want to ask of you and the clerk. We've been working now on amendments for 2 weeks. This is important legislation. It needs to be improved, and I think everybody's been working cooperatively to do that. But I also realize that if we are not able to complete our improvement of the bill and it delays over the Christmas break for 3 months, the provisions of C18 only kick in and can take up to 9 months. So we're basically putting off for a year the supports that local media organizations vitally need. So I would ask you if it's possible to schedule double meetings in the coming weeks so that we have more time to consider amendments and to work through the amendments. I think it's important legislative process, but we need to have more time, and there's also a certain urgency we've heard from many media organizations around this. So if it's possible to put in place extra meetings, I think it would be warranted and welcome given all of these things.
Perhaps we could hear from the clerk about whether that is possible or not. I don't know that she can give us the answer right away.
If the committee adopts a motion seeking further meetings, I will certainly put the request out there, but it'll be up to the services and their ability to support those meetings.
So you will let us know? Is that, sorry, I cannot hear you because your mask muffles your voice.
It's possible if the committee is agreeing to seek further meetings, I can certainly put that forward and see if there are other time slots available.
Agreed.
All right, and I just would like to ask, as now, then I think it is now 3 minutes after 1, and so declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.